77 is like,
And I don't know how they would get you on.
now it's only all the way from Delmar.
There we go.
Thank you. My knuckles are getting sore. Sorry. No, that's okay. It's good to be back together again. Let's us chat. We couldn't just chat on Zoom, so I appreciate it. You ready to start? Okay. Welcome to the Albany County Legislature Law Committee meeting. It is nice to see everybody. Would you like to take roll?
Sure, Madam Chairwoman. Fotsky,
Here.
Cunningham, Bergdorf,
Here.
Feeney, Kuhn,
Here.
Mayo,
Here.
Peter,
Here.
Ricard,
Present.
and Whalen.
Here.
7 present, Madam Chairwoman.
All right. Very good. Has anyone had a chance to look at the minutes of the last meeting?
I have, Madam Chair, and I'd love to make a motion.
You're great at that, thank you. All right, is there a second? Thank, Mr. Bergdorf, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Thank you. That passes. Item number 2. This is being tabled at request of sponsor. That's easy. Item number 3, I believe, is also being tabled at request of sponsor. Great. Item number 4 is tabled pending the public hearing, because that had to get rescheduled.
Yes, it does need to be rescheduled for the public hearing to take place in person.
Okay. Item 5 is also tabled pending the public hearing. And item 6 is the proposed local law G, adopting a pilot youth deer hunting program. This is to go to a public hearing. Does anyone?
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Peter.
Second.
Oh,
For the public hearing.
I forgot. We
That's
need to
right.
make a motion to amend the location.
Would love to do that, just
Thanks,
very
Mr.
briefly.
Mr. Bergdorf, would you mind seconding the
I would
motion?
second that.
All right, this changes the location from on Zoom to in-person hearings. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Thank you. Okay, so as amended, is there a motion?
Motion, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Peter. Thank you, Mr. Bergdorf. We need to give other people a chance sometime too, but I appreciate it both. All in favor?
Aye.
That's all I need.
Thank you. Okay, so that will go to public hearing. 7, of course, is tabled pending the public hearing. Item 8, Ms. Ziegler is in the house. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome back in person.
Thank you, and these are lovely chairs. It's so nice to be here. This is like really spiffed up.
Yes.
So, thank you so much. I'm asking your permission, please, to accept an award. This is a renewal. We have worked with the New York State Coalition Against Sexual Assault for several years now in accepting a small grant that we use really we focus it on our work with our immigrants and our refugee community, folks who during the migration process, the immigration process, have fallen sometimes victims to crimes. They may have been victims of crime in their home countries, and even when they're here, they are more vulnerable to being crime victims. So this money is really dedicated to working with the USCRI around providing those services to our community.
Any questions from Ms. Ziegler?
What were those initials, Karen? US?
The USCRI is the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but if no further questions, I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Ricard. Is there a
Second. Did I read?
Thank you, Mr. Coop.
You're
All in
great.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Was that the only one you're on this evening?
Yes, I think.
Okay, thank you. I believe Judge Herrick is here on item number 9, authorize an agreement with New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services regarding the Aid to Defense Program. Judge Herrick,
Good evening.
Thank you for being here.
It's great to be back in public. This is an application by the Public Defender's Office in Albany County to accept a recurring grant from the Division of Criminal Justice Services. It's an aid to defense grant. It's $42,738, and it supplements, does not add raises. It supplements 4 salaries in the Public Defender's Office. The purpose of the grant is to expedite the processing of serious and violent felony cases through the courts, and there's no county contribution. It's 2 support staff and 2 attorney positions that it helps support.
Very good. Any questions for Judge Herrick? May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Second, Mr. Mayo? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Have a
Judge
good
Barry.
night.
Exactly.
Okay. Item number 10, Ms. Orth, here for this and many other items.
Yes, yes.
Item 10 is authorizing the submission of a grant application and an agreement with New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services regarding the gun-involved violence elimination program.
This is a renewal. It's called the GIVE program, and this is for $236,000 and $236,740. Can't forget the $740. And this supports the salaries of 4 individuals in our organization that work towards prosecuting gun crimes in the office. And this is no reduction from year to year. It is a very easy renewal that they gave to us for fighting gun violence, which we know is in the headlines a lot these days.
Any questions for Ms. Orth? Yes, Mr.
I have a question. Heather, I know I've raised this issue in the past, but these monies they go to Albany PD, who you have a partnership with, District Attorney, and Probation.
Correct.
Is there an opportunity for other municipalities to be involved in this program? In talking to our outgoing chief, John Teal, from Colony a number of months ago, he told me that there have been more illegal handguns seized in Colony in the first 4 months of this year than in entire years past. And I'm just wondering if the benefits of this program, what would a municipality have to do in order to participate?
So the GIVE program, I don't know if you remember Operation Impact from way back in the day. Operation Impact looked at violent felony crimes. So it was gun activity, and it was DV, and it was homicides. What they did is they changed Impact to GIVE, and the only thing that they do, the state, looks at crime rates. And so they look at which cities have the highest gun crime rates, specifically in New York State, and then they only allow those jurisdictions to apply for the funding. So while Albany County gets to apply because we house Albany City, the only police department that gets to apply is Albany City, and we have to apply as a group. So Probation, the City of Albany, and us put in a group application, and then we get funding. So it's not even like Colony could. If Colony's gun numbers rose to higher than Albany, or there was some justification that Colony could make to the state to say, hey, we should get some gun revenue as well because we're seeing an uptick, there's a case to be made there. But it's really the cities or the localities where the gun crime is the highest. And it's not just guns recovered, it's shootings, right? So even though Colony has a large number of guns recovered, the shootings are incomparable to the City of Albany.
Correct.
Mr. Bean.
So just following off my colleague's comments, because there's been a lot of things in the news of, gun violence doesn't really have a jurisdiction, right? Like people will come to where there's activity and they can be from several areas, and I think that might be what my colleague was saying. So, where the shot's fired isn't necessarily where you can prevent the crime, where the guns are before illegal activity happens. So is there anything we can do, thinking, maybe not for this grant, right?
Right.
I understand the specifications and the feds have their thing, but just thinking broader, we want to stop the shootings before they happen, and if we're seeing a rise in seizures around the suburbs and stuff like that, or around the region, right? Like how can we adjust for that? Is there any ways to include those suburbs one way or the other in programs like that, even if it's not for this grant?
So what I can tell you is because of this grant, we have weekly and monthly meetings with our GIVE partners. So members of Probation, members of other actually Schenectady and Troy participate because they get funding for this grant, because they are the city with the highest number of shootings, right? And so they sit on these calls and they discuss every single shooting that's happened in the city of Albany, or every one that's happened in the jurisdiction. And so I don't see why other adjoining police departments, Bethlehem, Colony, Guilderland, couldn't, it's law enforcement sensitive information, so I don't understand why they couldn't sit in and listen, because you're right, just because they live in one location doesn't mean that's where the crime is committed. And, we've seen, Cohoes, Waterville, we've seen some things recently that, are a little bit different. So I think that there's absolutely a possibility. We have a quarterly chiefs meeting at the DA's office where we bring the chiefs together and we just discuss any issues that are arising. We talk a lot about reform, we've talked a lot about other things that are happening. So, we could absolutely bring a group together to discuss, what are the strategies? Would, operation level intelligence sharing between agencies be something that would be important? Maybe there's a bi-weekly meeting where you're discussing these shootings and, where the actors live, where they live versus where they tend to hang out. So I absolutely do think that there are opportunities to get people together to discuss this. Funding-wise, again, I don't know, not specifically this grant, but I know that there's a lot of funding. Recently, the AG's office just announced the funding to combat gun violence. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and I think an innovative idea to work together as a region would absolutely be something that people would be interested in.
Can I just ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Just to piggyback on what both of my colleagues said, I have heard that a lot of these individuals that are committing these crimes, in Albany in particular, do live in another municipality, and they're coming to Albany to commit these crimes. So anything you can do to get everybody on the same page to help out our friends in Albany or Colony or Cohoes or where I'm from, that'd be really beneficial, I think, for everybody. So.
Absolutely. I can talk to the DA too about our next chiefs meeting and start at the chiefs level. I'm sure anyone who's interested in having some solutions would be more than welcome at the table.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you,
more
Chair.
questions about the grant? No? Okay, may I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Mayo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Item 11 also was moved forth regarding the Aid to Prosecution Program.
So the Aid to Prosecution Program funds our chief ADA as well as our major offense bureau chief, partial salaries for each to prosecute the violent felony offenders, repeat or violent felony offenders that come through the office. This is actually an amendment to the 2020 grant. As a result of COVID, they extended the grant for 6 months rather than doing a new grant. So all this is doing is extending the 2020 grant, which has already been passed, another 6 months at the exact same rate.
Any questions?
Dave Rusty doesn't want to cut and pay?
We could ask him. Probably not, but everyone's willing to do things for the team now, right? We need to take one for the team.
Madam Chair, if there's no further questions, I'd like to make a motion.
Any further questions? Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Mayo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 12, a grant application and an agreement with New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services regarding the Crimes Against Revenue program.
So the Crimes Against Revenue program is our CARP program. This grant funds, again, full or partial salaries for 6 individuals in our organization, and with the aim of recuperating public dollars that were stolen through financial crimes, either welfare fraud or tax fraud, any of those instances where we can get tax dollars back from individuals who have stolen public funding. And this grant is, again, a reimbursement. It's the exact same rate, which is, again, fantastic during COVID times. And we will continue with those numbers and with the staffing that we have.
Okay, any questions?
Quick question. You say this funds 6?
Full or partial. So it funds partially the bureau chief of the financial crimes unit, a full assistant district attorney position, 2 partial assistant district attorney positions, and 2 admin positions, partially.
Okay, so it's basically 3 full-time equivalents.
Yep.
Is there that much of this type of crime out there?
Absolutely. if you're a business, you probably have someone who is somehow, using, and if you're stealing from anyone, if you're doing drugs, dealing drugs, you're skirting tax revenue. So any financial crime that really comes into the office, it does have a public side to it.
Have they been involved in the unemployment insurance fraud?
We get the calls all the time, absolutely. And while there's not necessarily a ton we can do because a lot of the people are not even here, we do work with the state unemployment office all the time.
Department of
Yep.
Labor.
Workers' Comp, Department of Labor, Department of Tax and Finance. And I mean, we all hear that gun crimes are going up, right? Because there's an immediate, there's a victim in those types of cases. These crimes are skyrocketing more than anything. And the white collar crimes are, you don't hear about them as much, but they're devastating as well.
If I ask, how are the recoveries going with those crimes? Like looking at an average year?
So the grant funding is usually, we won't get all the grant funding if we don't at least meet that number. So every year, it really depends. Over the course of the program, we've gotten back millions of dollars for different county and state agencies. And so they do send us reports. So I can forward you the most recent report.
Just curious.
And we are actually on par with more of the larger counties in the state, which you wouldn't necessarily think because we're a smaller county comparatively, but we do actually get a large amount of revenue back for the county and the state. And a lot of times, people are willing to make restitution if the options are restitution or a period of incarceration.
Fair enough. Any more questions from Ms. Warren? No. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Mayo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
We sure did say second.
Madam Chair, did we vote on 11?
I believe so.
So we did, okay.
Did we vote on that?
We did 10
Well,
and
there's
11?
two of them with the same title.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 12 and 13 are.
So 11 was the 6-month renewal that they did, and then 14 is a whole nother grant year.
Okay.
Okay. And we're up to number 13.
So number 13 is for our motor vehicle theft and insurance fraud prevention program. This, it funds one prosecutor, and this prosecutor focuses on vehicle thefts and insurance fraud. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of insurance fraud prosecutions, but the motor vehicle thefts have been drastically increasing as a lot of times motor vehicles are stolen to use in other types of crimes. So this grant is, again, a renewal, and it is remaining at the same rate as it has been.
Okay. Any questions?
Madam Chair, a motion if there are no further questions.
Seconded.
Hurry, jeez. Thank you, Mr. Berto. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Back to the
No.
scene of the
Thank you. Item 14.
So this is the aid to prosecution program again, which again funds Dave Rossi's salary as well as the bureau chief of our major offense unit. And this is an actual renewal. They have now changed their the start date of the grant. It ended after the 6-month renewal, and now this is a full, now 12-month renewal at the same rate that we have consistently been at.
Any questions? No. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Card. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Ward.
Can I just ask a quick question of Heather?
Of course.
Can you give us sort of a general impression of the impact on your office relative to bail reform? I mean, we constantly read in the newspaper that A, B, and C happened, and appearance summons out on the street, DA's pocketbook stolen an hour later. What is the impact on your office?
It's massive. I mean, I'll tell you that we are almost at a point where we can't deal with the amount of data that we're getting. I mean, just today, we now have to put a new process in place because there's a new vendor that does the calls for one department, and so they're going to send it to us a different way. It takes 2 hours just to download one of those and get it up to our network, so then we can turn it over. So the impact in the courtroom is massive. We have people not coming back. We have people getting out and returning because they commit another crime. We have on the, what you don't see behind the doors is the data entry has increased 1,000-fold. I mean, it's literally churning and churning and churning, and I had a meeting today with our support staff, and they're frustrated. It's a lot of work. And the intent is great. We need reforms. I just think that the reforms ended up putting more work, more people, more money into the wrong side of the system. We put it into the system when people have already failed rather than putting it up front in prevention. And so I think you're just going to see continued failures of the system because the bail reform is just not intended and not written to really reform anything. It just changed a few tweaks without looking at the overall system.
As well?
Oh, just to your point, when I was reading the agenda, I thought it was interesting the way it says funds will be used to enhance the prosecution of repeat violent and serious felony offenders by maintaining increased levels of experienced prosecution personnel who will seek to minimize the plea bargaining option and to impose the maximum sentence for such defendants. I mean, it doesn't really sound like you're able to do any of this, really, at all. Like, this sounds so heavy-handed, but that's not even a reality.
Well,
like,
right.
If these people, I mean, some of these folks aren't even coming back. I mean, well, maybe the violent and serious felony offenders, it's arguable, like, whether they're being released and they're not coming back.
Correct.
So I find this language, in view of what's going on, almost like it's from an old form, from some form that you used like 5 years ago or something. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's kind of interesting to me.
And you're right, because on the one hand, the state pushed for the reforms, right? The governor pushed for the reforms and wanted these reforms. And on the other hand, they're sending out, that's the same grant language that it's always been.
So they're giving
it's like there's conflicting.
They're giving you money for things that they've already reformed, that they don't even want you to be doing anymore. So it's, yeah, that's exactly right. It's like a contradiction, kind of, right?
Yeah.
We should probably.
But we're not going to take away, we're going to accept any money we to take.
Is there actually data comparative year to year on release repeat offenders? I'm not doubting anecdotal evidence, right? But it's anecdotal. I like data and year to year, things like that. At a later time, respecting the time, is it possible that we can get some year to year data on repeat offenders, absconders, things of that nature to actually see what the effects are?
Yes, I mean, I'll do my absolute best to get it for you. And I know everybody wants to get out of here, and I'm sorry, but an interesting point of bail reform is that DCJS has always housed all of the data for all of the dispositions of all the criminal cases in the state. Bail reform took the housing of all of that information and the mining of all of that data away from DCJS. So collecting data like that was historically pretty easy because DCJS would send out monthly reports and you could see that type of information. Now, it's not all going to one central repository anymore, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to track. So absolutely, we are attempting to do that the best that we can, and any data that we are able to mine and collect and put together, I can absolutely get it over to you guys.
Thank
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For items 15 and 16, I need a motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you, Mr.
I'd
Carter.
like to make a motion based on the fact that we're discussing potential litigation. You have to give the reason.
Oh, thank you.
Potential
I will
litigation?
second Mr.
Motion as clarified by Mr. Bergdorf. Thank you very much.
You need to clarify who stays and who goes, right? So for executive
Well,
session.
the motion needs to be counted.
So all in favor of entering executive session?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. Passes unanimously. All right, we are back out of executive session. Is there a motion for a vote on item 15?
Motion, Madam Chair.
Second. All in favor of item 15?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. Is there a motion on item
Motion.
16? Thank you, Mr. Ritter.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Whalen, for a second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Passes unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you both. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.